Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry, and all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we published somewhere around 75 children's books, and we've all taught illustration in university art programs.
That is correct. Every week we come at you guys with different illustrator interviews or questions from our listeners, which are awesome. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but each time you learn something brand spanking new.
Brand spanking new.
It should say sometimes we argue and Will usually wins.
We'll never win. That's the cool part about that. You never win.
All right,
Will does get his say in, so that's good enough. But
he says stuff. It's not correct, but there are things that are said.
Today's questions come from our Patreon, and we do a monthly hotline where they get a couple days to ask a question, and then we record it and answer those right away. So a lot of times the questions that we're getting outside of that, these are questions that come in a month, 2 months earlier as we kind of get through the list. And so this is a way for just to kind of get our patrons some pretty quick feedback on some of the things that they're asking. And we had some good questions today. So the first one is from Danielle. She says, have any of you experienced imposter syndrome as an artist? And if so, do you have any tips to overcome it? I see so much incredible work out there. And even though I've had my own successes as an artist, it's hard not to feel incredibly inadequate at times. So, you guys deal with that? Do you still deal with that, or was it a thing of the past?
I have a weird psychosis where I have the opposite problem of that, where I'm not even self-aware enough to know. I'm like, I could do it. Surely I could do it. But I totally can't.
that is kind of a requirement to be an entrepreneur.
Maybe
is overestimating your abilities.
Yeah,
I've always done that too.
Like, why can't I do it?
Like, I have always been the guy where if there's an opportunity and I don't feel ready, I'm like, whatever. The worst that can happen is I fail. And I think that's because I failed all through school. Mm-hmm. So I got comfortable with failure. I got comfortable bringing home a crappy report card to my parents and having them go, Will. And I'm like, look,
because you were in an overachiever family too.
Yes. My dad was working on his PhD.
Sisters overachieved.
Yeah. So I got very comfortable with, well, the worst that can happen is I can fail again. But yeah. I do know when I first started, it's like, I think what she's talking about is something that definitely is more in the beginning of a career where you're like, I mean, no one, when we're freelancing, no one says, hey, you're now good enough to freelance. I mean, you just have to start doing it, right?
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like you never arrive. You never feel like you've arrived. Or if you do feel like you've arrived, it's fleeting. It's for a day, and then you got to get back to work and do stuff that's uncomfortable. I have a friend who's like, be the type of person who would climb Mount Everest, who would summit Mount Everest and never tell anybody about it. And the reason for that is make sure you're doing stuff for the right reasons. Make sure you're doing things. Make sure you know the reasons you're doing stuff for, because that helps you deal with this feeling that like you're an imposter or not. If you're going into art with a service mindset, like understanding who you're trying to serve with your skills, then it's going to sort of change everything about how you produce art and who you make art for, right? So essentially there's like three sort of avenues that you could choose as an artist. Number one, do you want to serve an employer, a publisher, someone who's hiring you to do the job? And that whole thing is are you able to perform the task and do the job for them? Are they happy with it? And as long as they're happy with it and you feel good about the work that you did, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter the accolades or the awards or anything like that, right? The second one is, do you want to serve a fan base, right? Do you want to serve patrons or people who, an online base of people who are just interested in what you're doing, then as long as your fans are happy, as long as they feel like they're getting what what you said you'd provide, and everyone's happy, then you should feel satisfied. You should feel like you're doing a good job, and not worry about critics or anybody else, because critics aren't your fans. Anybody else who's ignoring you aren't fans. Just worry about those people who are really interested in you. And then the last one is, are you worried, or do you want to serve yourself? Like, is art just a you thing? And if that's the case, if you just want to make art for yourself, there's some sort of personal gratification there, then it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, as long as you feel like you're doing a good job, as long as the art is bringing you satisfaction and joy. And it's not perfectly siloed, I think, for everybody in those things. I'm definitely this person who, growing up, I loved making art just to entertain myself. Then I started getting positive feedback from people, and so I wanted to make art to impress people. And then I really sort of qualified myself to do nothing else but art, and so then it had to be a career. So I had to find people to serve with my artwork to make money from. And so I'm sort of this mix of balancing, am I satisfying myself while also paying the bills, while also, feeding a fan base, not a huge fan base, but a fan base nonetheless.
It's an
Next question.
Well, it's an interesting thing. Let me talk a little bit about this person that I did a critique for the other day. She was feeling a little bit of almost imposter syndrome, and she's done like 15 books or something already, and they're awesome. And I was like, oh my gosh, if anybody's not an imposter, it's you. You're already 15 books in. You're got an established style. You're really good. And but it was just interesting that even successful people can have that feeling.
Yeah.
It was interesting because I was thinking about it, and I was scrolling through Instagram, and I came across this quote. Rarely do I like sports quotes because they're always just kind of self-grandizing or something.
Yeah.
But it was this interview with Kobe. It was really interesting, and they'd asked him if he had a fear of failure, or if he had a fear of sort of like the weight of the expectation of success was on him too. So it's kind of both two sides of that equation. And his answer was really interesting. He's like, either one of those, whether you start thinking about, oh God, what if I fail? Or I'm supposed to win. And so it's sort of the same thing. What if I fail and the expectations are high that I'm supposed to do really good? And he said he doesn't worry about it. Either one of those things is going to be a limiter on you because you're worried about the outcome. And if you're trying to protect the outcome, make a piece that's nice or whatever, your performance is going to be subpar. And so he's like, I go out there and try to think like, first off, I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can. And I'm going to play free to the best of my ability. And as long as I do that, that's all I can really do at my
You're
capacity.
focusing on he's talking about focusing on the steps.
Right. And what he can
I just
control.
follow my rules. I follow my rules. I do what I know works. Then outcome will be a result.
Right. But if you started think about an NBA player, if they start looking around at how good everybody is the best of the best, that could be really intimidating. And that's sort of what we experience as artists on Instagram, right? As we're scrolling, there's Loish. Oh my gosh, there's, every swipe of my finger is an amazing piece of work, and everybody's working, and I'm like, it hits me especially hard when I'm in between projects and I feel like everybody's busy, and I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing?
Right.
And you going back to that quote that Kobe said, you just kind of dig in and say, okay, what kind of images am I going to make? It's all I can do, and hope that it's up there. You know what I mean? Hope that people it resonates with somebody.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good way to look at it. Next question. This one's for Lee. She says, a little while ago, this is from Sarah. A little while ago, I finally took Lee's business classes at SVSLearn. They were awesome, but I'm curious, when Lee recorded the class, he had image licensing options on his website, which he doesn't anymore as far as I can see. How did that system of licensing work out, and what can we learn from it?
That's a good question. the licensing, I can't remember what web package I had. I had some kind of website package, and it included a licensing thing. So if you said, "Oh, if a client got to my website, said I like this image," they could say it had there was a little button that said license it, and then it would kind of give different options for that. Oh, you're going to do a half-page magazine ad, and it's going to run monthly, and it would give them an automatic price. So sometimes I would wake up and there would be just money in my bank account where somebody had licensed an image, and it was really great. The reason I took it off was because licensing has become so much more complicated since that time. That was early, before there were so many places to advertise an image and so many ways to use an image, that I felt like the kind of the pull down menu option didn't really serve it as well. And so now whenever I license an image, I have a client contact me and say, "Hey, we're interested in licensing." And then I have to go through the steps. Okay, how much do you want to, how many months do you want to use it? Where do you want to use it? What kind of rights are you looking for? And then base the number on that. So it just wasn't covering enough specifics for how widely images are used now. It could be a greeting card. That's an easy one. But it could also be, a website header for a company. It didn't have anything that specific. Mm-hmm. So I had to pull it.
Okay. That's interesting. Because I always thought that was like such a cool idea that you had going on there.
It was neat. I mean, it worked, but like I said, it was just a little too simplistic. And then sometimes it would give a price that maybe I wouldn't give, like it overshoots the price and scares a client away.
Mm.
So
yeah, cool.
Good question though.
All right, next one from Irene. Artist health tips. I feel like a lot of artists prioritize the grind and often overlook their physical health, especially art school kids who love to brag about how little they slept for some reason. Crying, smiling emoji. Do you guys have any regimens to keep your arms, wrists, eyes in tip-top shape? I was a full-time concept artist last year and it absolutely wrecked my eyesight. I don't know how one's supposed to work full-time as an artist without deteriorating physically. Here's the caveat. I'm only 22. Thought I was going to be talking to this is a 30-year-old here. I'm only 22, so maybe this is just aging. So you're talking to a guy, I'm in my 40s. We've got someone here inching up against 60.
Who's that?
And then another guy.
And then me, I'm 20s like
immortal.
you, Irene. So.
No, Lee's probably the fittest 50-year-old I've ever met.
I'm 50. Yeah, I'm 53 now. This year, I'm starting to get little ads in my mail for like senior discounts because that happens. Starts at 55.
That's crazy.
And let me tell you this: do not think that I am not going to go through every bit of small print to see what I get at 55. If I can get in a movie cheaper, that's what I did with my credit card company, and the stuff that I have gotten from my credit card company, I think they can't honestly believe it. That I read all that stuff because I'm like, nope, I get this discount and then I get this extended warranty and it comes with it. And, I'm going to read all the fine print. But yeah, I mean, we're all getting older and I'm using weirdo devices to,
I had to finally get readers so I could see.
Jake's
and do you know what happened yesterday or last week? I never thought I'd do this, but I had to change like globally on my phone, the font size. So that everything was just one size bigger.
That's a moment in time. Like that's a line in the sand.
The warranty's up at 40.
Yeah.
That's when the reading stuff, the eyes start losing their elasticity.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys a question. This is a little bit of a side note, especially to Will since he's so old. We've been doing this for a long time. Is this a career for life? Like when we used to look at the Black Book, remember the Black Books that would come out, Will?
Yeah.
That every year and scroll through it looking at illustrators. How many of those illustrators are still illustrators?
Well, I know a lot of them have moved into gallery work. So a lot of them are doing. I look at some of the hero illustrators that I had when I was in school, and they're doing gallery stuff. A lot of them.
They bailed on the commercial stuff.
Well, a big reason for that is because editorial work kind of dried up. I mean, we got the internet. Photoshop, stock illustration, a whole bunch of factors of why that industry changed. But anyway, yeah, I mean, like, for me, my desire to make art has not gone away at all, which I'm grateful for. And I don't think it ever will. There's something, I mean, I want to challenge myself. So, I'm learning how to write now. But, yeah, I think you can retire in this, but you are going to deteriorate in some, like Lee, you have a standing desk, right? You stand a lot.
I do.
Like,
Yeah, mine's a motorized desk I got on Facebook Marketplace for like $200. Originally, it was like $3,000. I got it from a lawyer's office, and so you can find those deals. But I mean, I guess what you're alluding to is starting the process early of taking care of yourself in a proactive way. There's only now, speaking to Irene, she worked as a concept artist full-time. Rector. Will, Jake, and I have all done that mode, and Will has often said it on this podcast. Like, there's a certain time to be in this career where you are going to grind, and there's nobody who has made it without that all-nighters and 7 days a week and super out of whack life balance. But you got to bail from that as quick as you can and try to protect yourself while you're in that mode, because carpal tunnel will start to set in, nerve damage will start to set in. I mean, a whole host, like muscular imbalances will start to set in. If you're not careful, it will derail your career. You can't be in that mode forever. I mean, none of us are in that mode now anymore, I don't think, except for maybe possibly Jake sometimes. Me and Will are lazy, I think, at this point.
You're not. No, we do other things though. Like you're demolishing a condo the other day that you bought to fix it up. So we work on stuff. Like, one of the things I do is I just decided to take my health really seriously. So I exercise 3 times a day. I play pickleball in the morning. I swim laps in the afternoon, and I either go for a walk or pickleball or more laps at night. And the reason for that is I see so many hunched over people that have just kind of given up.
It looked like a question mark.
The problems that come with it are so huge that living in a retirement community, I see my future all around me, right? And there's guys that are in their 90s playing tennis and pickleball and stuff, and then when they die, they just like get sick and die. Like, they don't linger around, you know what I mean? Like, it's finally the end, and the end is quick. That's what I want. But then there's the people that are like ending for 15 or 20 years where they can't hardly walk. They're using a walker and they're just hanging around forever. They can't exercise anymore.
They're a ghost.
Yeah, I don't want that. I'm hoping not to have that. Or they stroke out and then they really have problems, And
my dad.
Oh, go ahead, Jake.
I was just gonna say, my dad turns 80 next year, and he still rides his bike every day. He's putting on miles every day. He's gonna die of a bus hitting him sooner than he'll die of any sort of
a great death.
I mean, being active is a huge thing. I mean, I think that's going to be step one. That's what kind of Will and Jake are both alluding to, is that if you just have to be active and you got to go outside. I mean, I really don't think you can just do it at your desk. Like, if you think standing up means physical exercise, that's just to get the blood flowing while you're working. But you need to go outside. You need to move. That's step one. Step two is going to be support systems. We, as artists, tend to hold our arms up. And like, say I'm holding a stylus or a pencil. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing me hold my stylus. It's not heavy, right? It weighs an ounce or something like that. But if you hold, so my shoulder muscle is engaged slightly, and the neck muscle, trapezius muscle on the right side, I'm right-handed, is engaged slightly, but not enough to where it's not like I'm lifting something heavy that I notice it. But if I sit in this position for 8 hours, you have now strained the whole right side of your body. And again, one day it's not going to matter. You do that 1 year, it's going to start to matter. You do that for 5 years, and now you have a chronic problem that you can't get rid of. So supporting the weight is important, whether you have an armchair that has support for your arm. But if you're holding your arm up in the air while you're drawing and you're doing that all day, you are going to have muscular problems. So getting the support, just kind of looking at how you work, I guess is where I'm going with it, because we all have different positions that we like to draw in. If you're one of those people that, I don't think Jake or Will is one of these people. I'm definitely not. But some of my students, when they draw, they hunch over and they put their face like 1 inch from the paper. You guys see people like that? Their face is right there, which means your back and your neck are totally hunched. Like Will was saying, you do that once, it's no big deal. You do that for 10 years, now your back looks like a question mark. It's completely curved, and that is really difficult to straighten back out. So you just got to look at it as an overall well-being. Am I moving enough? Am I supporting the muscles that I'm using throughout the day? Am I in a good posture? You start asking yourself those things. And then lastly, I'll say this person, Irene, is totally right. There's this weird it's a humble brag in a weird way that, I worked 13 hours yesterday. I worked all night on this. I haven't slept in a week. And it's a weird badge of honor. It means to me, when I hear people say that, what I think to myself is,
poor planning.
You don't know how to organize your time, and you're stupid. I mean, we're all going to do that every.
The all-nighter never worked for me. Never.
Yeah, all it does is wreck you the next day.
It robs you. It robs of your future. Yeah, I mean,
it's better to go to sleep and then do a better job in the morning or whenever you can get up. I mean, like I said, we're all going to have those moments where you really have to jam. But if that's your normal, something's wrong with your normal.
Now, I'm going to get a caveat to that. There have been times where I'm in the flow. Have you ever been in the flow where you're designing, drawing, and everything is working so good, like it's just firing, or you're painting and everything's working, and you don't want to stop, right?
Right.
Sure.
And in those times, I have gone to the wee hours of the morning because I'm like, if I break this flow right now,
you're in a groove.
I might not. Yeah, I might not.
Well,
come
there's
back
nothing wrong with that because you're not you're obviously into it and you're not pushing yourself past.
Right.
You're not fatigued. You're not. You're obviously you have thought about your posture. This other stuff that I said earlier. Like you can, as long as you've thought about that stuff, work as much as you want. But then you'll give yourself the break. You're not doing that every day, right?
No, definitely not. This question brought to you by AARP.
Well, it does mean something as you start to get older. You don't get the free pass anymore. When I was a 20, in my early 20s, I'll tell you this. I was a competitive skateboarder, and I was a ramp rider and rode pools and stuff like that. That was what I competed in. And if I was in the air, if I was anywhere close to being near my board, I would still try to land it. That's in my early 20s. That is a very dangerous thing to do. Now I'm paying the price for some of that stuff. You know what I mean? It's a long life and everything you do kind of adds up over time. So you just got to think of it as this cumulative effect that will catch up with you eventually. And you just got to plan for it.
For good and bad. Like, weight training, bone density activities, you're going to wish you had started doing that in your 20s and 30s, in your 50s and 60s, and kept it up.
Yep.
I think you're right too. I just want to reemphasize sleep, how important sleep is. Like your main tool in this craft is your brain, and sleep is how it recharges and resets. And sleep is, if you ever study up on what sleep actually does, is it's essentially extracting when you use your brain, it's all chemicals. Your brain's just using chemicals to like make these neurons fire and make all these connections, and you're just loading your brain up with chemicals. And what sleep does is it kind of flushes all that out and resets it. That's what dreaming is. It's just flushing and resetting all that so that you wake up in the morning and you've got a fresh brain ready to rock and roll. So don't sleep on sleep.
Are you guys good at sleeping?
I'm great at it.
Really?
Well, what do you mean good at it?
Like when you go to bed, do you get a full night's sleep? Do you fall asleep
Talking
easily?
about
do you
eight hours?
Asleep? I mean, everybody's different, but do you get a full night's sleep you feel?
I don't.
The last few years I've had a hard time, but I've been doing these tricks to get me to stay asleep, which have been really helpful.
I knew you'd try to hack sleep. I knew if I dug down in that question, you'd be like, step 1, lower the lights to 50%. Step 2,
don't look
turn
at your
off all
phone before you go to
screens,
bed.
50. Bigger deal than that is cooling your house down. Like
Yes.
if your house is colder, you'll sleep better.
That's true.
That is definitely true.
And
You
one
guys
hack
should
there-
Google.
One hack
go
there
ahead.
though is if you're really hot, you could shower before bed, and having sort of a wet head that's like drying out is going to cool it down, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, you can definitely hack your sleep, though. I mean, our listeners should Google that, because I want to second that. If you're not getting enough sleep, no amount of exercise or nutrition or any support system is going to help you. Sleep is number one.
Cool.
I'm terrible at it.
Next question. All right. This is from Jason. A question for each of you. This is a fun one. If you had to choose one based purely on illustration, we'll do this a flash round or a lightning round. If you based purely on illustration, what is your favorite children's book? Mine is Days of Summer, or The Rules of Summer by Shantan.